Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Just a couple of very quick administrative matters. You've already heard the fire drill this morning. If the fire alarm does go off for any reason, if you can follow one of the members of staff from the front, then we'll escort you out of the relevant fire exit and take you to the safety point. Can I also ask that everybody's phones turned off at this point? I'd be grateful. Apart from that, obviously, licensing subcommittee doesn't have a standing chair, and therefore I would ask members to nominate somebody who can take the chair and then take over the meeting from me, please. Can I have nominations, please, for chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Jean Douglas.
I'll second that one.
Thank you, councillors. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this morning's meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee on Monday, the 17th of January, 2022 at 10:05 a.m. Okay, so my name is Councillor Jean Douglas, and I am the chair of this subcommittee today. Therefore, present with me, also members, are councillors Pam Posnett, councillor Don Pritchett, and an observer, councillor Prue Chandler. The following council officers are also present today. We have Louise Arnold, the senior solicitor and legal advisor, Helen Ainge, the Democratic Services Officer, Sarah Evans, the Democratic Services Officer, and David Martsenchenko. Isn't he here? No, okay. Sorry, he's not here. Oh, he is. Yes, actually, David Martsenchenko is present remotely as the Environmental Health Officer. Oh, is he at the back? Where is he? He's over there. He's waving. Okay. We got there in the end. Thank you. Hello, David. The following council officers are joining remotely. Sarah Flower, the Licensing and Compliance Officer, and Simon Greensmith, the Licensing and Compliance Officer as well. We have the following parties present. William Hazelrig, the applicant. Hello, William. Yes. And Lisa Gillian, the legal advisor for the applicant. Hello. We also have Chris Beale, the sound management expert. Stuart Southwick, the security and traffic management expert. Brian Cleary, the health and safety advisor. Oh, is he joining virtually? Okay, just make a note of that. Okay, sure. We also have Robbie Parry, the technical operations. Nico Payne, as in French, yes. Production manager. Rose Faraha from Beaver Castle. Emma Stenning from Beaver Castle. Charlotte Worley from Beaver Castle. Councillor Cherry Underwood for Statham Parish Council. Councillor, now Ian Rather isn't with us today. It is, just a moment, let's see where my list is. Tom Parry, thank you. Thank you. And we have Emily Chandler, a member of the public, and Steve Exwood, a member of the public, and Ben Lee, a member of the public. At the end of the representations, the meeting will be adjourned. The subcommittee will then retire to make their or our decision. The parties may remain in the meeting room here and await the outcome, but you must turn off your microphones as the meeting will remain live on YouTube during this period. Please turn mobile phones to silent and note that the meeting will be recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Okay, so yes, agenda item number 2. Do we have any apologies for absence? Okay. Oh, so will he be joining us later? Oh, okay. So Tom Parry, Robbie. Okay, the technical operations. So he's absent. Thank you. Any further apologies? Thank you. No, okay. No, oh, yes. Oh, Emma Stenning from Beaver Castle. Thank you. Do you think she'll join us later? No. Okay, thank you. Any further apologies that we're aware of or absences? No. Okay, yeah. In that case, then we'll move on to agenda item number 3. Do members have any interests to declare?
No.
No.
No. Thank you. Members, neither do myself, so thank you. Okay, so agenda item number 4, moving on to the actual Licensing Act 2003, the Noisily Festival Premises Licence application, to consider any evidence or representations made following receipt of a new premises licence application in respect of the Noisily Festival to be held on land owned by Beaver Castle, known as Terrace Hills Farm, Beaver Road, Eton, and to determine the application in accordance with the licensing objectives. Okay, so the procedure we shall follow today is, number 1, the licensing officer will present the report. 2, the applicant or his representative will present their application and address the representations with an opportunity afterwards for questions. 3, the 5 interested parties who are present will then each be given the opportunity to present their cases, and after each presentation, there'll be an opportunity for questions. 4, the parties will then be given the opportunity to make closing statements. 5, I will then adjourn the hearing to enable the subcommittee to retire and to make a decision. We will then be accompanied by our legal advisor, who will advise on the law and any relevant guidance or case law. Any person may be represented by a person of their choosing, whether they are legally qualified or not. Any person may withdraw their representations at any point during this hearing. The subcommittee and legal advisor may ask questions at any point in the hearing to clarify any matter. This is not a court, and as such, strict court rules do not apply. The hearing will follow the procedure I have just outlined. Any evidence to be given will not be given under oath, but I should remind parties that providing untrue statements is a criminal offence under the Licensing Act of 2003. Any comment or statement or question must be addressed through me as the chair and notified by raising their hand. There will be no direct cross-examination by any person of any person. Questions will be permitted at the allotted times. I have and will exercise the right to intervene and interrupt any person that, if that person is providing evidence or asking questions that are not relevant to the hearing today or to the 4 licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, 2, public safety, 3, the prevention of public nuisance, and 4, the protection of children from harm. If any person behaves in an unruly or disruptive manner, I shall exercise my rights as chair to adjourn the hearing and consider removing that person. Before we start, can I confirm the parties have received all of the paperwork? Yes, yes. Okay, that looks like a yes. And finally, the regulations state that all parties must have an equal length of time to make their representations. So we need to agree a maximum time. Is anyone's representation going to take more than, say, 10 minutes? No, no. Okay, so I would say then 10 minutes it is. So each person will have a maximum of 10 minutes in which to make their representation. The legal advisor will give you a 1-minute warning before the end of your 10 minutes. Right, so over to the licensing officer who will present their report. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Councillor Douglas. So on the 23rd of November 2021, Melton Borough Council's licensing team received an application for a premises licence to hold a 4-day music festival, including camping, for up to 14,999 persons at Terrace Hill Farm in Nipton. The licence application by Noisley Festival Limited. The premises falls within close proximity to Stathern Village, but also the parishes of Barkston, Plunga and Redmile. The premises licence application is requesting indoor and outdoor exhibition of film, performance of live music, playing of recorded music, performance of dance, anything of a similar nature, namely performing arts, and late night refreshments. Supply of alcohol for consumption on the premises, and all of these are between the hours on Thursday between 12 noon and 4 a.m. On Friday and Saturdays between 10 a.m. and 5 a.m. and on a Sunday between 10 a.m. and midnight. The site's opening hours are requested as being Thursday at midday until Sunday at midnight. During the 28-day consultation period, 41 representations were received. 2 were from Environmental Health, who are one of the responsible authorities who must be consulted with every new application. These related to 2 of the licensing objectives, and the first was public safety, relating to engaging with the safety advisory group and submitting a completed final event safety management plan within a defined timescale as set out in Appendix C4. The second was for the prevention of public nuisance, which was namely the noise management plan as listed in Appendix C13. Both have put forward recommendations within the representation period for the committee to consider. The other representations came from 39 members of the public, and they relate in some part to the 4 licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. A list of the representations and the outline of the objections has been published within the report and the agenda pack. Since the original publication of the agenda pack, all attending parties have been notified that the representation known as C2 was amended as only the initial inquiry had initially been published at first instead of the full representation, which was received in the required timeframe. So apologies for that minor error there. I would ask that members consider carefully all the information which is available to them, both in the agenda pack and the additional information before making an informed decision on the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions on the report? Okay, so as regards the applicant submission, I will now invite the applicant or their representative to present their application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As has been outlined already, the application for Noisley is for a music and arts festival to take place between the 7th and the 10th of July 2022. Let's try that. Is that better? Okay. Right. I'll move that slightly closer and then hopefully that will achieve it. Right, I'll start again. The Noisley Festival is a music and arts festival scheduled to take place between the 7th and the 10th of July 2022. The festival is in receipt of a Cultural Recovery Fund grant from the government, and obviously as a recipient of such a grant there is a very rigid application process to go through. The festival provides wellness, education, creativity workshops, live music, cinema, and street food. So it really is a very mixed cultural and arts festival. This is not just a live music event. Camping facilities are also proposed on site. It will be a fully ticketed event only for over 18s. So the intention would be that those attending will stay within the confines of the festival for the weekend. I know within some of the representations there have been concerns about people in the area, but that's really with the camping that's provided. The intention is that people will stay on site for the full weekend, and obviously having paid for the full ticket price, that would be what our guests are doing. 8 noisily festivals have taken place previously. The business has been operating since, the festival's been operating since 2012. The last 2 have been cancelled due to COVID. But the fact that we have 8 festivals, I hope, gives members of the committee some comfort in terms of a track record and the experience which Mr. Hazelrig and his team have, not only running the Noisily Festival, but organising large public events. In organising these festivals since 2012, there's been and continues to be engagement with all the relevant responsible authorities, and actually not just those that are concerned with licensing, because obviously an event on this scale, there are implications far wider than the Licensing Act 2003. You'll note from the report that there is no representation from the police to this application, which again, in my submission, would be a ringing endorsement in terms of the operator's track record. There are significant allegations made in terms of the prevention of crime and disorder in the representations, most particularly in relation to drugs. It'd be my position and repeated submission that there is no evidence to support any of those allegations, and had there been any incidents or concerns in relation to drugs at previous events, that would have been raised in a police representation. There's a huge amount of documentation within the bundle, which I'm sure you and your colleagues, Chair, will have read through. I don't intend to go through each of the policies page by page, but starting at page 241 are the supporting policies and procedures, and they run from page 241 to page 352. The authors of those policies, whether it be specifically in relation to event management, traffic and safety, noise, are all here at today's hearing, and so we'll be able to answer to specific questions within their area of specialism. You will have seen from the comments from the Environmental Health Officer reference to the Safety Advisory Group, SAG. For those, forgive me if everybody knows, but for the, just to confirm, the Safety Advisory Group is usually coordinated by the local authority with different representatives, from the authority and emergency services. The SAG group's purpose is to discuss and advise on the safety of a public event, and Mr. Hazelrig and his team recognise the importance of that collaborative approach. And there has been, I think at page 31 within your bundle, you'll see the condition which was sought by the first Environmental Health Officer, I think Joanne Belcher, in relation to engagement with the SAG group. That is a condition which is, fully accepted. And in fact, within our operating schedule at page 31, engagement with SAG and our event management plan are all detailed. Sorry, I beg your pardon, it's 239 where the Environmental Health Officer's condition is first sought. And you'll see there at point 2, the completed final event safety management plan to be submitted to the SAG, to the Safety Advisory Group members at least 2 weeks before the event. And that the event organisers and any future events will engage with the Safety Advisory Group at least 6 months before the planned events. So this event taking place is not going to take place in isolation. There is complete and utter engagement with the Safety Advisory Group. You'll also see in the event management plan the full and comprehensive nature of it, addressing issues such as risk assessment, noise, traffic management, litter, and emergency routes. These are all very wide-reaching and comprehensive. At page 295, there's a noise management plan. As I say, the author of that, Mr. Beale, is here to answer questions on that. Conditions have been sought and have been agreed with Mr. Marchenko, the second Environmental Health Officer. It would be my respectful submission that those conditions which have been put forward are measurable they're enforceable, and they're entirely proportionate. They require and set noise levels which will be appropriate at different points during the weekend. There is a full security plan set out and a full traffic management plan. I think it is significant to note that the only representation we have in relation to responsible authorities is from environmental health, and conditions have been agreed with both of your officers. Obviously, there's a huge amount of public feeling and concern and fears about the festival and other representations which have been received. I don't propose to go through those page by page, as there is quite a degree of repetition and copy and paste, which is, you know, entirely understandable, but I don't think because of that, what I've tried to do is put together the various licensing objectives to address. There are some representations which seem to draw on concerns about impact on their own businesses, and I would just like to, you know, clarify that commercial success is not, as I'm sure you and your colleagues are, you know, well aware, it's not a licensing objective. In terms of crime and disorder, comments are made in relation to the Wildlife and Countryside Act and the Forestry Commission. The Wildlife and Countryside Act is a completely different piece of and distinct legislation with its own enforcement regime. Your licensing officer has also confirmed within the report that the Forestry Commission have no concerns at all about this festival. So it would be my comment that any concerns, representations which raise environmental issues are not relevant to today's hearing. Drugs is an allegation which is raised repeatedly in a number of representations. I would like to state from the outset that this festival has a zero tolerance towards drugs. There is a search policy in place, and then any drugs which are found, if that as the first front didn't work, there is seizure within the festival, and people would be asked to leave who were found with drugs. Again, I repeat, there is no representation from the police, and therefore no evidence to suggest that there have been drugs problems at other festivals. Clearly, the internet is a fountain of information. There are lots and lots of comments on here from the Facebook, from bloggers, and I think unfortunately as well, and someone touches upon a suicide of a young man. Now, again, thank you. There is no evidence to suggest that that can be linked to our event in the past. We do have a zero tolerance. There is a search on arrival, and there would be seizure on site. So it would be simply not true to state that there is a lax attitude to drugs. In terms of noise, we have a comprehensive plan and our expert here to answer questions, and likewise in terms of traffic management. I would just stress and probably point out at this stage, as a result of those representations, Mr. Hazelrig has significantly amended the plan to the application, which I hope you'll have seen on page 353 and 354. You'll see from the revised plan on 354, the licensed area is now significantly smaller. The public footpath is now outside of the proposed demise, as is the large steep embankment, which is referred to. So there's been a significant reduction in the licensed area. There's a huge amount within, when we're happy to answer any questions, whether it be management, noise, nuisance, traffic, you know, all the representatives are here to assist.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, members, have you any questions of the applicant?
Thank you very much for that comprehensive summary. And I do note your points relating to the drug, and I concur with the papers in here that the link, a definite link to noisily promoting drugs is not there, that the objectors are putting forward. One thing I do need to take issue with you, the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, and I can't remember the full name of the 1994 Act, are relevant to crime and licensing. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from on this. The objectors say you shouldn't do anything because of the wildlife, and you're saying it's not an issue. However, to avoid intentional harm to birds, badgers or bats, it is possible to condition surveys and mitigate against the impact against that. So it is something that the panel will have to consider. It's not something that's outside today's deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett. Shall we go straight to the next councillor has got some questions, or would you like to address that first? Okay, yeah, we'll address Councillor Pritchett's concerns, and then we'll go over to Councillor Posnett. Thank you.
Perfect. Just in response to your question, we have spoken to Beaver at length about this, and there have already been surveys done by the RSPB, and they have looked into the environmental concerns within this. And we will be working with Beaver in the estate, as we have done in our previous, where we've held the event previously. We work with the environment. We use local recycled materials. And there's already a large farm track that goes through the whole site that we're using. So actually, the area of impact is very small. We're only using natural glades. We will not be disturbing the woodland. And believe me when I say we work with the Forestry Commission, we work with the Woodland Trust. We really do take serious care and consideration when it comes to environment. We offset every emission we make. We plant trees at our previous site to do that as well. We work with the environment, and this is something that we take very seriously. So when I say that it shouldn't be a concern, it should be a concern, but we will do it properly.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett.
Thank you. It's just really a question about the Safer Advisory Group. You said it's coordinated by the local authority. So how many meetings have you had with them?
So as of yet, because we haven't had we don't have a license, we haven't had any meetings with them. However, we have met individually with the environmental health officers, with the licensing officers. We've met with the police, all from the local area. This was before we'd even applied for the for the license. So we haven't opened a dialogue when we didn't need to yet, but there hasn't been a formal safety advisory group yet.
There isn't one yet for this event. We'd hope once the license is granted, at that point, the local authority then sets the safety advisory group together, and then you meet, and about it being 6 months before the event and documentation is submitted to them. There isn't a group for us to meet with yet because this event isn't licensed, and so hence the condition.
I just wanted to make the comment about we are very close to the 6 months, and it is important that this meeting does take place.
Oh yes,
and takes place very soon if we give you the license.
And hence it's a condition. We would be prosecuted if we didn't.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Posnett. Oh yes, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much. My second question: where are you getting your water from?
From what we found out so far, there's a 63 inch, 63 mil farm supply at a local farm, which we will take a temporary network from down to our site, which will then put in our water system. So it's all done from the mains water with a reserve supply, just in case the main supply goes down, which has never happened, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. But yes, it's from the supply at one of the Beaver-owned farms.
Thank you for that. Have you engaged with Severn Trent at the moment? Really, the background to this question is there are increasingly supply interruptions in the area and low pressure, and the council is meeting quarterly with Severn Trent on these issues, and there's work going ahead to put a new pipe into Waltham, which I think where the water comes down, and the event numbers are equivalent to the whole of the ward population, the population of Redmile, Barkston, Plunger, Harby, Hose, Long Clawson, and then up top Beaver, Nipton. 6,000 is doubling the population taking the water. And I noticed from the previous events at Coney Woods that you were working with Severn Trent to get the pressure increased at the event. So I'm interested in the authority that you have or have yet to get to take that water from there?
We've worked with Severn Trent for 10 years now, and I mean we've got a very good relationship. I have a direct line to someone I've worked with personally now for 6 years. We've increased the capacity at Knowsley successfully. We took it up from a 20 mil pipeline to a 60 mil pipeline, and it's, you know, I have a very good working relationship with them, and they understand our needs. Also, I'd like to point out that the farms at Beaver are they get high pressure because they use irrigation for the growing of food, and so they do have a high pressure line already installed there.
I don't know whether that's correct or not, but as I understand it, the water actually goes in tanks and goes on the back of tractors. For, you know, I don't know what the irrigation is there on that one. But you've led me on to, will it interrupt the supply to the farms with animals at that time of year?
It's arable up there, so when to animals, but no, it should not.
Well, it's not all arable. There's one close by. There are animals close by of commercial farming of cattle, and then there are other ponies and other things like that with the people. So, but you will be working with Severn Trent as you have done before, is what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes, we'll be working with Severn Trent, and we see no reason for that. There's never been a problem in the local area before. So with 10 years of experience, I can say confidently that we will not affect the local vicinity, because we never have. And I do not see, it was the end of the line at Knowsley as well. So if we were to have taken significant amounts, we would have dropped the whole line the other side. So from, yeah, with experience, no, we will not cause effect.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett and the applicant. Actually, building on from that, I have a question. Leading on from that, I should really say. You say you've had festivals going since 2012, and obviously it's been difficult the last few years. Have you actually had any at all on this particular site in this area of Beaver and indeed on the farm itself? Thank you.
No, because we're applying for a license. We're moving from our previous site for some very personal reasons, and my father's ill health being one of them. We are looking to find a new home. So we have been operating at Knowsley, where we started out to help protect the estate, but unfortunately things changed. So now we are looking for a new place to go. We haven't got a license to have done anything there yet. So that's why we're here. We've started a discussion with the council and the responsible authorities to do it right. And basically we're here to ensure that we can do that.
Thank you. Yes. Well, in that case, I'd also like to ask a question about the sewerage. How do you deal with, obviously you've got toilets on site. How do you deal with that? I mean, have you got at the end of and also the rubbish at the end of the event, you know, blowing into woods and the picking? It must be so difficult to get rid of the waste from sheer numbers. Just a little bit more on that for me. Thank you.
So we're a very conscious event. We have worked in the woodlands, as I say, for 10 years, and they are spotless. And one of the things we do is we have composting toilets that come on. We have one of the leading suppliers of these in the country. They set up a huge temporary network of toilets that are then taken away to an organic composting facility. We don't use your standard chemical toilets, because actually, I don't know if you know this, but it's embalming fluid that it's used in the chemical toilets that is very toxic. So we do not use that because of the area that we're in. Then also we have the leading recycling and waste management company in the area called Enver, who they do all of the local hospitals, the local airports. They are the best in business. And then we have a huge litter picking team. So actually at the end of the event, we have the litter picking are on site 7 days after the event finishes, and the site is spotless. They do fine pick after fine pick. And we have an older crowd. Their sort of average age is 34 to 36. So at the end of the last event, we had 1 tent left behind. We're not your standard event that you see sort of in the newspapers with fields of rubbish. We are a single-use plastic-free site. all traders use compostable cutlery and crockery. The food is all sourced locally, so that all of the food traders are made to buy their meat, dairy and vegetables from local suppliers, which is the same for our crew catering as well. So yeah, we have put a lot of thought into it, and I can believe me when I say it's spotless afterwards.
And I mean, that sounds quite interesting. The fact that, you know, the waste is actually taken away and dealt with in a more eco-friendly way. That's actually quite interesting. What about the noise issues in the night? I mean, I can imagine if I lived in Stathern, I'd be thinking, oh, am I going to get any sleep, you know, for a couple of nights? I mean, can you explain how you would, what the noise would be like, you know, until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning? I'm thinking about shift workers, people with children. Anyway, just a little bit on your point of view on that, please. Thank you.
We take that exceptionally seriously. And for the last 10 years, we've been working with Chris Beale from SPL, and who's the best in the business. And he has created this amazing system, which we use, and we take it very seriously. We haven't had a noise complaint for 5 years at Knowsley, and actually Godeby, the local village there, is closer than Stathern is to us now. So with confidence, I can say that it will not be a nuisance. And Chris is here on hand to actually explain further, because he's the expert in the field. I mean, he really knows it. So if he can answer your question in greater detail if you'd like.
To not have a complaint in 5 years is rather amazing. Do you really think people are going to stay on site? Do you think they're going to wander off? I mean, I'm concerned about, you know, got some quite specialized farms around with livestock that are quite unique and very important to people's livelihoods. Do you think people really will stay on site? I mean, you say it's not just live music. What's to keep them on site? Can you just tell me in your own words just a little bit more about that? And I think I'll kind of keep it at that then. Thank you.
So our guests pay £200 for their tickets. And in 10 years, we have, as I say, Godeby is our local village. No one has ever gone into Godeby because we provide the entertainment that is needed. Godeby doesn't have any shops, but if they did, on people's entrance to the festival, we do actually bring back to the local economy. So taxi drivers and all sorts of petrol stations and stops and things on the way to the festival will benefit from us being there. However, the local residents have never been affected by people just wandering off. We have security in place to prevent this. Also, I'd like to point out at our previous place where we were, they have a very large sort of, they're very into their horses, and they have some very expensive carriage driving horses, and they are sort of 800 meters away from where the festival is held, and never once have they been disturbed even. So we take all this very seriously. There's security in place, there's fences in place, there's roaming security. I mean, there's all sorts of measures in place to prevent this happening. But I can believe me when I say that the people who've paid their high ticket price to come to the event, they're not sort of there to go wandering off and wandering out, because if that was the case, then we haven't done our job properly, because the entertainment isn't as good as they were hoping. But yes, 10 years of experiences, that's not the case.
Thank you. That's all the questions from me at this point. Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you for that. There are public footpaths and roads, and people are entitled to use those. If you were to receive a license for 1 year only to start off with this, in the papers, forgive me, what would be the evaluation process in combination with the council to evaluate the success, teething issues, lessons to be learned? Is there a process in?
So Lisa will be able to clarify more on this, but within the Licensing Act already, there is that built in. If you receive a license to a place, it doesn't need to have a time limit put on it, because if we do not meet any of the conditions, then the council and the authority have the right to call us in for another hearing. So you do not need to put a time constraint onto a license, because effectively that is already in place, because if we do anything wrong, then we can be called back in to have a review of our license.
I think what the councillor was maybe getting at, as well, forgive me, I'm putting words into your mouth, was evaluating after the event. So do we have a meeting with authorities, but I suppose a follow-up SAG almost, so we can look at, okay, how did the event run and how did it go? What lessons could we learn? What things might we change? What was good? What was bad? How do we move forward for the next one? I think that's perhaps the question.
Yeah, sorry about that. We previously have handed in all of our reports, like for example, Mr. Marshenko from the environmental health, and we have to submit our noise report to him within a week of the event taking place. Normally this will be done much sooner, but we will feed back and be talking to the council and the officers the whole time. And as soon as we start planning the next year, we'll convene the SAG almost immediately. So previously we did that in September, and then that's when the responsible authorities, we get together and we make the improvements on the areas that they've seen need improving. And it's a collaborative effort. This is something that we're doing together. We take it very seriously. At the end of the day, this is our business as well.
Yes, I mean, would it be, has it been normal for officers, observers from Harborough Council to be there for the weekend or to pop along at times?
So the environmental health officer would come every day while we were active. Then council representatives would normally come on the Friday as well. The police were there every day, like a couple of times a day, coming in and out. And that's the Leicestershire Constabulary as well. So obviously they're the same force. I actually know like members from your local beat because of them sort of coming across. So yes, I mean they're there the whole time. We're open book, so whenever they want to come, that is totally fine. We're happy.
Well, I think at this point, no further questions from the members themselves. Does the legal advisor have any questions? Over to Louise. Thank you.
I do have one question, if that's okay. You've briefly referred to it yourself about the fact that the licensing authority can obviously call in the license at any point once it's valid. I note from your application that the license doesn't become valid until the 7th of July itself, which means that any conditions that are agreed in the lead up to the festival wouldn't become able to be brought in before then. So it's just a question about things like engagement with the safety advisory group, how the local authority wouldn't be able to enforce. So it's just a technicality point really about the reason why it was kicking in on the day that the festival starts, if that makes sense.
And that's just what was on our previous license, so we'd be happy to change it. That's just what I just basically copied across from what was on our old license. So we'd be happy to change that to work for the council.
Our anticipation was never to avoid compliance. I think, as Mr. Hazelrigg said, he completed that, taking it from the last one. So if wording needed to be altered to ensure that it reflected from the date of hearing, that we would obviously not object to that at all.
Right, thank you. Okay, so do any other parties have any questions? There's somebody has the hand raised at the back of the room. Is that all right? Do they? Yes. We have somebody has raised their hand at the back of the room. Would you like to come and take a seat and make your presence known and announce yourself? Or would you like to? I mean, you can shout from there if. Okay, we can hear you. Yes.
Words of your own marketing material as well. Mentioned education. So specifically, what is the psychedelic society educating people about in the mind, body, and soul area?
I think on the first point, I wasn't seeking to dismiss it all. I was seeking to introduce some balance to, and the weight which one might attach, or committee members might attach to excerpts from the internet. I'm certainly, I appreciate there is a lot of information there, and I wasn't asking you to disregard it all. But in relation to the Psychedelic Society, I think perhaps over to you.
As we're all aware, and it's mainstream news at the moment, there's a lot of research being done into the use of psychedelics as antidepressants. Psychedelic Society had actually arranged for Dr. Amanda Fielding Mellon to come and do a lecture at the festival. She runs the Bleckley Institute. She's just raised, I think it's £700 million in funding to educate and to help treat people that are seriously ill. So, I mean, Dr. Amanda Fielding Mellon is a public figure. She is at the forefront of her field, and I think that any lectures from her would have been fascinating.
Can the good gentleman at the back of the room who asked the question, can you repeat the question, because some people couldn't hear it on the kind of recorded YouTube, and I'll repeat it after you ask. Yes.
The question was that I asked, or I noted that they had dismissed information. I noticed that quite a lot of information that is from material what
Okay, so the gentleman at the back of the room asked why is the information on the internet dismissed regarding the Noisily Festival, and what is the Psychedelic Association educating people about? And then the applicant went on to explain that the doctor is attending at the event to give a lecture. That is actually quite interesting, to the attendees on psychedelics and the link to antidepressants and so on. It'd be very, so it would be a very interesting lecture, I should think.
Yeah, very interesting. And she actually has received permission from the government to research these things as well. So it's
a government researcher.
She is a professional scientist who we were getting to come along and provide a lecture.
Yeah, thank you. Gosh. Okay. Okay, yes. Any further questions from anybody? Oh, we've got a lady at the back of the room. I haven't got my glasses on, so if I'm offending you, I can't see that far. We are social distancing today. Oh, it's Prue. Councillor Chandler. Yes, I couldn't even see that. Yes, could we speak into the microphones? Did you hear his response? Do you want him to repeat it? No. Yes. Yeah, we can't hear. Yes, we've just decided that because we can't hear people at the back of the room, we do need to invite them to come forwards to speak on the chair into the microphone in future. Okay, so so just to ask you again, would you like the applicant to repeat what he just answered with the microphone being closer to his face so you can hear? Did you get that? Okay. Okay, we'll speak closer to the microphones up here, including myself. Okay. Okay, we have another hand up in the room. Would you like to come up to the desk and press the button and the bottom middle button, and then the red light comes on and you know that everybody can hear you. If you can't do it, somebody will come along. That's it. You've done it.
Perfect. Technology. I'd just like to ask why the link between having a professor on use of psychedelic drugs as antidepressants in a music festival, why you feel you need to do that?
because it's very interesting. Same, it was in the Daily Telegraph this weekend. I wonder why. I mean, they wrote about it. It's a topic of conversation that is in the public field at the moment. It's you know, it's news and it's interesting.
So you feel there's no link between the actual event itself and the lecture you're proposing? It's a random choice.
But it's just an interesting piece that we have chosen to put on. Well, our team up there has chosen to put on. It's there's no link. Well, hopefully people don't need treatment for depression at the event.
Yes, thank you. Any further questions from anybody? I mean, on that theme of giving a lecture during the day, an interesting topic, but what other things, other activities, in a nutshell, are you putting on? Because, you know, you just think of this event of being live music, people staying late into the night, all night, camping, enjoying themselves. Obviously, there's alcohol there too. So what other activities during the day, just to kind of put that lecture into a bit of a context thing, please, for me? Thank you.
So as was referenced, there's the mind, body and soul area, which is comprised of sort of three main areas. The mind tent does lectures and does things quite a lot on permaculture, quite a lot on forestry, sort of interesting topics that take place in the mind tent. And that's all about sort of, as I say, education. The body tent is all about movement and things like yoga and all sorts of activities along that line. And then the soul tent is about things like meditation, and they do all sorts of other things around that. So that's a really large aspect of the event, which we've become quite sort of renowned for, because it's really progressive and it sort of really pushes these practices forwards, and like it's helped sort of provide a lot of insight and new activities to people along those lines. Then there's we have circus performers, so we have a circus performance stage. We have a cinema tent which shows sort of old films, all sorts of films. We had sort of people who'd made their documentaries come and introduce them, do talks about their documentaries and then show the documentary. And then there's the musical element to it as well. Then we have a sort of a large street food area, which has got lots of really good restaurants, quite a few local ones, quite a few from further afield as well. And I think that's about it, yeah. But there's a lot to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just needed the lecture put into a wider context, and I hadn't realised the mind, body and soul tent kind of approach. That's a lot more than I thought, actually. Yeah, thank you. I don't know. Oh yes, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you for that description. I've seen it. I wasn't going to ask this, but I will. You ran through the events that are on, the complementary events to the music. You didn't mention fire. Fire is featured before, I understand. I mean, I'm asking the question in context of the location and the time of the year. And you did omit it. So could you include fire into your summary, please?
So fire is part of the circus performance. Sorry, I didn't go deeper into what the circus
Yeah.
performers actually do, but they're all trained in fire safety. There is everything around there that is needed. We've worked with it's a volunteer team at Bilston in the past, and they're all very happy with the procedures that we have in place for it. So yes, there is fire, but it's you know, it's a sort of fire breathers themselves and things like that. So it's not a dangerous fire show, if you see what I mean. It's very controlled and safe.
I do note your risk assessments in here. Yeah.
Okay, we have one hand raised at the back of the room. Would you like to come forwards and to press the button in the middle of the bottom row so the light on the microphone lights up red so we can hear you and speak into it nice and clearly. Thank you.
Hi. Who are Psycher UK and how many people have they treated at your previous events?
So SciCare UK are a harm reduction company. They're a registered charity, and they come to events and they look after people that have that are unwell, not medically unwell, but unwell because of other things such as drink and drugs. And we do have a zero tolerance approach, but as we all know, there are drugs present in all walks of life. So we have taken a policy of looking after people that are unwell. SciCare do not treat lots and lots of people. They are there purely over and above to look after our guests.
Thank you to the gentleman who's returned to his seat. Any further questions? No. Okay, at this point then. Okay, so we do not have any responsible authority submissions. We do have interested parties submissions, and I will now ask the interested parties to present their representations. First on the list, we have Councillor Cherry Underwood from Statham Parish Council. So it's 10 minutes each now, and we will warn you. Yeah, we will. Yes, the one in the middle. Yes. So if you'd like to press the button at the bottom in the middle, so the light goes on red. That's it. Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Underwood.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. Good morning, all. Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee regarding the Noisley Festival on behalf of the village of Statham. For the avoidance of doubt, we are urging this committee to refuse this dangerous, ill thought out application, which will cause serious detriment to our local area and communities. Before I continue, may I ask if the committee have visited or are familiar with the site? I think you probably are. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. You have before you an application for a festival of up to 15,000 people in a rural area on farmland and woodland, valuable habitats for a range of wildlife during term time, in the middle of harvest and sandwiched between a national right-of-way, 3 rural villages and a busy B road. I'm sure you can see why we have concerns about this application. Firstly, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that this application is fundamentally flawed. It relies on reports and evidence that we suggest are incomplete, inconsistent, inaccurate. They reflect a rushed, urgent and ill-considered application. Let me start with the location. Is it Eton or Nipton? The most recent map provided by the applicant on January the 6th, that's Appendix K, has changed the boundary to the site considerably. It's been referred to. In fact, the applicant suggests it's no longer based at Terrace Hill Farm at all, as suggested on the application. In fact, this has significantly reduced the space available, and yet the numbers that have been applied for have not been reduced. In terms of the management plan, is it for this year? Is it for this location? It seems a bit ambiguous. And then again, in the traffic management plan, traffic is clearly going to be a major concern for you in mitigating the risk. The traffic management company quoted here have not even visited the site. They state that. No doubt they and the applicant are not even aware that in 2019, LCC reduced the speed limit adjacent to the camping area proposed due to a higher than national average number of accidents. This is an accident black spot. It is a very dangerous road. The quoted planning time is 12 months. The parish, Statham Parish, I might add, not the others, were consulted in November. Others have yet to be. A mere 8 months before the event. I note, and it has been mentioned about the Safety Advisory Group, that you've agreed to a condition of meeting 6 months in advance. We already can't meet that time frame if we're talking about a July start. There are gaps in comments that I believe are from essential consultees. Areas of the site are covered by higher level stewardship schemes, which have seen considerable investment in order to protect habitats. I don't believe the Natural England have been consulted and have responded. I believe economic gain by a private company over public funds invested for habitat protection will reflect incredibly badly on a licensing authority. It's been mentioned about the water. Have Severn Trent been consulted? You've said You've worked with them in the past, but have they been consulted specifically to this site? I've lived in the area for over a decade. I have never seen farmland on Belvoir irrigated in the way you describe. We have serious water shortages. The water system cannot cope, and we regularly have our primary schools shut during this period because the water supply cannot meet demand. I believe these inaccuracies are misleading to the committee and to the wider consultees. Surely any technical or supporting reports must be accurate, and they must be clearly based on the application being considered, or how can you be expected to make diligent decisions? Specifically in relation to crime and disorder, it is a crime under the Wildlife and Countryside Act of 1981 to disturb breeding birds and damage wildlife. Up to 4 weeks of build, festival and dismantling, 15,000 people and all the traffic related will indeed disturb the woodcocks, snipes, goshawks, owls and numerous mammals. The camping and car parking is over farmland that is a known hunting corridor for barn and tawny owls and raptors. Belvoir estates state minimal disturbance to wildlife, so they accept that there will indeed be disturbance to wildlife. There is no assessment of the woodland environment, of nesting birds, badger sets, etc., in order to negate damage. This event will undoubtedly cause crimes against wildlife as defined in the 1981 Act. The noisily drugs policy suggests a zero tolerance. However, your marketing, promotion and actions suggest a very different stance, that drug use is accepted and tolerated. Please do not dismiss the coroner's report of the young Brighton student who died. As a result, he fell to his death, and it was acknowledged that that was possibly as a come down from the drugs taken at the Noisley Festival. On the grounds of crime and disorder, this application should be refused. In terms of key points relating to public safety, the location is largely inaccessible to emergency vehicles. Accidents in this location normally require air ambulance due to the access complications. You will have read about the 3-day search for a body in these woods. These are dense, ancient woodlands on steep escarpments. The condoned use of drugs, a dense woodland, hidden areas of water, and a busy, fast adjacent road. Need I say any more? It's July, height of summer, barbecues, fires, woodlands. The risk of fire is considerable, and again, the access for the fire authority is impossible, putting local farms, crops, and livestock at risk. The use of drugs and alcohol means the risk of discarded needles, bottles, and other drug paraphernalia will be left in the undergrowth for wildlife children to find for potentially years to come. It is impossible to secure the entire perimeter of the site, leading to unauthorised, uncontrolled access. The applicant suggests festival goers can use public transport. For those of us in the Vale, we will understand the challenges there. The walk from the nearest bus stops will be considerable and along busy B roads with no pavements. On the grounds of public safety, this event should be refused. The event poses considerable public nuisance. Noisley is identified as one of the loudest festivals, this in a rural setting and during term time. 15,000 festival goers, plus all the setup and takedown traffic on B roads, some of which are single track through local villages. These same roads are heavily used by cyclists and horse riders, putting them at considerable risk. The use of the Jubilee Way and local footpaths and bridleway networks has grown exponentially since COVID-19 struck us, and is well used during the proposed period for Duke of Edinburgh's award expeditions for school children across the region. The absolute risk to person and animals for adjacent equestrian and farming business is critical. I'm sure Emily Chandler can identify more about this. On the grounds that this event causes significant public nuisance, it should be refused. It will put our children at risk of significant harm. Increased traffic through our villages when children are playing out in the evening, unable to sleep during exam time and during school term due to the noise, finding drug paraphernalia when playing in the woods. On the grounds of preventing risk to our children and harm to our children, this event should be refused. The committee are no doubt aware that Belvoir Estates host the National Firework Championships and other high-profile events, including concerts, on another site on the same estate. It is unclear why this site is not being used for this application. In conclusion, we urge the committee to consider the significant risks and potential criminal activity that this event poses to people, to wildlife, to businesses and to our rural landscape. Further, it will negatively impact, I believe, on Melton's reputation for supporting and promoting our rural communities. No amount of conditions will mitigate against these risks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Underwood. Do we have any questions from members? Yes, no, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Stavan, if a licence was granted and the applicant and Melton Borough Council work with this virtual organisations safety partnership, the virtual organisation, can you describe to me the circumstances of people on foot arriving in Statham from the festival area and traffic in Statham? And what would you require to manage that on the day? What's the extent of input from police and various traffic wardens that you would require?
Is that on? Yeah. I don't think it's just on the day. We're talking about the traffic, the setup. We're talking about a whole month. We already cannot handle the traffic that we have going through our village. We have a large development which is going to continue over the next 2 years in the village, housing development, and we're having to manage a traffic management plan to try and route traffic around the village. Unfortunately, SatNav will route people directly through Statham. That happens very regularly. We have a number, all the footpaths, so Toffs Hill, the Jubilee Way, everything will route through Statham. We have a shop, we have a pub, we have a garage. We know that people will come and try and access the village. Can it be mitigated against? We don't believe so. Not safely, not when our children are also walking to school.
Specifically now during the event when all the people are here, on a scale of 0 to 10, what do you think the chance of a complete bottleneck from one end of Statham to the hill and a complete gridlock and nobody can move? What do you think the risk of that is on 0 to 10 without any marshalling on the day?
There is, it will create an absolute bottleneck through the village.
What I'm saying is you would require significant input of planning and resources for your village alone from the safety group to actually manage the conditions.
We would require somebody to marshal every junction, every footpath for the entire period. And as I go back to not just during the event itself, but on the lead up to it and afterwards. There are a significant number of access points through the village, both on foot and by vehicle, that we would need to be policed and managed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Chair, so just one point on that. I'm conscious that traffic management, you didn't hear, we haven't talked specifically to our traffic management plan. Obviously, the author of that is here. And I don't know that given so many allegations have been made about traffic and not referred to our plan, whether it would be helpful at this point to go through the plan to answer those questions, because I'm conscious we didn't address traffic and it didn't come out of earlier questions.
On that point, I didn't see the documents comprehensive enough in the papers to cover the wider area other than the immediate approaches to an exit from the site, and that is why I asked the question. So, but I do take your point, and
Yeah.
I'm welcome listening. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wondered if it might be the, if your concern is not addressed in the document, that the author should, would be able to give that additional information.
And to be fair, I think some things can't be addressed, that you're referring things, you want to refer things to the safety partnership to work these things out, basically. So I think it's a fair comment to ask of what the safety partnership is going to have to tackle. So I think it's not necessarily critical of your plan. It's looking at the broader and given the knowledge of the area, I think it was a fair question to ask the council and the council to give a local opinion on. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we could actually get distracted again and again and again. And the evidence we have in the pack is what we have to go by today. Is that so? Oh, let me refer you to the legal advisor.
Obviously, if anybody has a specific question that they want addressed by the person responsible and here to help on the traffic management plan, I don't think it really appropriate for them to come and give an extra bit of presentation at this stage. So if anybody's got a specific question that needs to be addressed by them, then by all means, but I don't think getting them up now would be fair.
So it was more the point about if there is a specific and if we can assist, then, you know, we will try to.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And on that point, does the legal advisor have any questions? No. And does the applicant have any questions? You've made a point, but have you any questions of Councillor Underwood?
No, I think my only question would be, and I do appreciate the level of concern, but do you have any evidence of drug use at Noisley Festival over the past 8 years?
Sorry. Obviously, what we've researched is what we have available to us. We've not gone and asked for any feedback from the police. We've taken the research that we have available to us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And does any other party have any questions of Councillor Underwood? Okay. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Underwood. We shall now move on to the next party who has an interest, Councillor Tom Parry. Oh no, he's not. Oh, that's the different Parry. Yes, thank you. Of Barkston, Plunger and Redmile Parish Council. Thank you. We have two Parrys today, but this is Councillor Tom Parry. Thank you. So if you'd like to press the button in the middle at the bottom, it'll light up.
There we go. Is that working? Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for permitting me to speak this morning. I'm making representations on behalf of Barkstone, Plunger and Redmile Parish Council. And just to be clear, the Parish Council is strongly opposed to this licence being permitted. The specific comments around the licensing objectives are included in our written representations and are reflected by the many other comments of our residents. So I'm not going to run through them, but I do want to emphasize the context of this, particularly the nature of this site, which I don't think the evidence I've seen so far and the plans gives any idea that the applicant has properly considered this site and its suitability for this event. The applications for a major event, the like of which our area has never experienced. And we at Barkstone, Plunger, Redmile Parish Council are amazed that there was absolutely no engagement with us by the applicant or with our community. And what we can see they have supported so far for this application looks pretty feeble, mainly being out of date management plans from previous years. We can't see how the committee can be expected to come to a robust decision on the basis of this information that it's received. We don't think it's sufficient for an application like this to consist of a promise of various action plans, some of which would be submitted possibly only 2 weeks before the event. This is a premises license, but we're not talking about a few extra drinking hours at a bar on the Queen's Jubilee. There needs to be far more work done up front. The applicant says there should be a 12-month period of planning, but there's less than 6 months before the event. We don't think the applicant has shown evidence of having more than a faint idea how it might manage the difficulties the site presents, and it's not even clear that they know what they are. Recently, the site was changed. Previously, it was going to be up at Terrace Hills Farm, and the new plan and the new suggestion is that it would be on Long Lane. So even the goalposts are being moved there as we go along. Now, the site itself is a large area of dense woodland. In many places, it's impassable underfoot. In others, it's very steeply sloped. Until now, it's been managed only as woodland, and it's not a place for recreation. It would be impossible to fence it properly and to maintain any kind of security. Access for emergency vehicles is extremely limited, and the likelihood of serious injury or worse to people attending the festival is very high. The area around the woodland is not suited to a large influx of visitors. Mr. Pritchett has already mentioned the equivalent population of most of the villages in that vale would still not be sufficient to equal the numbers. All the roads in the area are narrow with no footpaths and tall growing verges, while the huge number of cars attempting to use these roads would present safety issues. There are even greater issues for anyone attempting to access the site on foot, which they would have to do if they attempted to use the very limited public transport available. And the difficulty of keeping the site secure would lead to easy access for non-ticket holders, including children, and they would be as vulnerable to the dangers of this site as others. The woodland's also currently in a higher tier woodland management scheme. This scheme, for which substantial capital grants have been received, is aimed at managing more complex land in environmentally difficult sites, which require support from Natural England or the Forestry Commission. There was a comment about the Forestry Commission not having any issues, but it's not clear exactly what they were asked on this particular thing and whether they were asked about the higher tier woodland management scheme, and there's been no comment from Natural England. We think this necessary to get comment from them. The very fact that it is a higher tier scheme supports the fact that these woodlands have an abundance of wildlife, and the noise and disturbance caused by the festival will no doubt be intentional, and therefore it will be an offence under the Wildlife Act 1981. Plenty of observations have been made by others about the expectation of the illegal use of drugs at the festival, and I won't expand further on that. More worrying is the effect that any drug taking, including that of alcohol, would have on the traffic after the festival is finished, negotiating our narrow roads and seriously dangerous junctions near to the site, which have seen more than one fatality. We're also concerned that the impossibility of imposing tight security on the site will result in crimes such as theft and vandalism taking place in villages nearby. Sound is very likely to be a major cause of public nuisance. Has any investigation been done as to how the agreed noise levels will impact the villages nearby? I'm not aware that it has. We note that the previous site for this festival consisted of a natural arena which held sound in, and this site is completely the opposite, reflecting the noise towards our villages, which are 2/3 of a mile away. We know that noise travels across the valley from the Beaver Escarpment very easily. However, just as worrying will be the high level of nuisance to the residents in this area during the whole build and break process, which is going to last several weeks, and by the large volume of traffic which will inevitably go through the villages with their narrow roads unless prevented from doing so. The current traffic management plan suggests that our villages, Plunga, Red Mile and Barkstone, are a sensible route to the site, but I believe that the site hasn't actually been visited yet. It is also well known that festivals create a huge amount of waste, and that festival goers' attitudes to leaving waste leaves a great deal to be desired. And in these woods, an effective cleanup operation would be impossible if, as is absolutely necessary, the local authority exercises its power to impose conditions on waste management under the Environmental Protection Act 1990. It's difficult to see how that could be properly enforced. So in summary, we know that large festivals are huge polluters in terms of emissions, waste, noise and light. In licensing terms, that creates issues around at least 3 of the 4 objectives. We know that this site makes it very difficult to manage these issues, and we've seen no plan and very little engagement from the applicant. We think that granting this application would have an adverse impact in our area, which would last long after the event was over.
Thank you, Councillor Tom Perry. Okay, members, do you have any questions of Councillor Perry? Is it Parry? Parry. Yes, sorry, Parry. Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your comprehensive presentation. Thinking about the area of the festival, the area of Barkston, the area of Red Mile, I've got a question for you. We hear about the safety partnership between Leicestershire, the Melton Borough Council, Fire and Leicestershire and police. Can I explore with you some of the features of the area of the festival site? In so much, would people be coming through Nottinghamshire? Where does the first fire response often come from for the area? Does it come from Bingham and Grantham, or does it come from Melton or Leicester? And do people for minor injuries go to Grantham, which is Lincolnshire? I mean, what is your experience of the 3 county issues in that area?
It's a good question, and one to which I'm afraid I don't particularly know the answer. It is, as you say, we are very close to the borders of Rushcliffe and Lincolnshire, and exactly how the emergency services operate there, as to, like you say, where they come from. I don't know the answer. There are some other people from Barkston who are behind me who may.
It's okay, but what I will say is, if you're coming from Nottingham, you would leave the A52 and come through Red Mile, would you not?
You would. Red Mile is suffering already from
Granby, Langer. You would
yeah.
be coming through not, these are not main roads, so you would be accessing, you would be coming in, and again from Grantham Station, Lincolnshire, coming off the A1, that part of the world that we live in out there. 3 counties are actually involved, aren't they?
A sat nav would usually take you, if you went to Belvoir Castle, it would take you through Red Mile, which is a problem that Red Mile is currently experiencing already, a considerable increase in traffic because of the engine yard at Belvoir Castle. Red Mile has significant parking problems, and the main road through the middle of Red Mile, which is what you would use, is basically a single track road because of the parking. So if there were even a small amount of increase in traffic along that road, there would be a gridlock, and there would be considerable difficulty and possibility of accidents. As far as Barkstone is concerned, it is probably less likely to be a main route through, because SatNav won't take you through Barkstone, but it may well take you through Plunga if you're coming from Nottingham. If you're coming from other areas, such as Grantham, you'll probably be directed down Long Lane, although I know some sat-navs do take you through a terribly small road that you're aware of, Castle View Road, which is a very narrow single track road. But Long Lane itself is a dangerous road for people to travel on, and the entrances out of our villages onto Long Lane are very dangerous indeed. You can't actually see anything, particularly in summer when the verges are growing up high, until you more or less edged out into Long Lane to see.
Thank you very much. I mean, the point of that was to just bring out the fact that it's not just one county involved in the area there. Thank you. And that the safety partnership would have to liaise with Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no questions from myself. So thank you, Councillor Parry, for that. Thank you. Moving on to the next party, Emily Chandler, who's a member of the public. Thank you. Just need to press the button in the middle at the bottom. That's it.
Can everyone hear me okay? Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the Noisily Music Festival. My name is Emily Chandler. I am a current member of Great Britain's Equestrian Squad training towards the Olympics in Paris in 2024. I'm an elite rider and high performance coach for Team GB. I own my own equestrian facility in Stathern, adjacent to the proposed site of the Noisley Music Festival and dangerously close to the world-class equine athletes in my care. Regarding public nuisance, I'd like to start with how this music festival will impact on my horse's safety and the safety of others with its extreme noise through the day and night into the early hours of the morning, vibrations and excessive lighting. I quote from one of my support letters from Major Richard Waygood, MBE, Performance Director of the British Equestrian Federation. Horses are creatures of habit and flight and are very vulnerable when placed in a hostile environment in a space they would normally feel safe and secure. Horses are flight animals which will act instinctively in distressing or alarming situations to protect themselves without thinking of the consequences. I'm terrified my horses will become dangerous to handle and to ride, risking severe injury to themselves, my staff, or passers-by. Worse still, their behaviour could cause fatal accidents. I quote from another supporting letter from Alex Knott at Oakham Vet Hospital, referring to the noise and disruption music festivals cause. Should the horse be alarmed or scared by any of the noise or traffic, this could be catastrophic, leading to fatality. There also poses a huge risk to my sport horse breeding programme. The mares will be at an early stage in their pregnancy at the proposed festival date. This will be a vulnerable time in the gestation period. Any amount of unnecessary distress caused at this time would cause the mares to abort their foal, or further complications could prove fatal for the mares themselves. I quote again from the British Equestrian Performance Manager. I fully support Emily's warranted concerns, and as a local council, you have a very serious responsibility and duty of care regarding animal welfare. With regard to crime and disorder, there is a public footpath which runs all the way down the side of my land, behind my house and within 50 metres of my yard. This will undoubtedly be abused by those trying to gain access to the festival. Any increase in the number of people on this footpath will impact on my privacy, and I'm scared there will be alcohol or drug-fueled intruders spilling onto my property. It puts me, my staff, clients, including their children, dogs and horses, at an increased risk of harm, injury, and potential death. Furthermore, those who attend my premises for coaching and training on a regular basis will also be subject to these considerable risks. Another public nuisance matter are my concerns regarding waste being disposed onto my land, whether it be carelessly dropped, deliberately disposed, or blown by the wind. These concerns are huge. Let me explain why. Equestrian sport at elite level is subject to zero tolerance drug rules. All riders must be very careful with what them, their staff, or their owners feed their horses. Something as simple as chocolate found in a horse's system can lead to failing a dope test at a competition and consequently be career-ending for either myself or other GB riders who attend training on my premises. And it is the rider who is held wholly responsible for a horse failing a dope test. As confirmed by Major Richard Waygood. Now, more than ever, it is essential that riders are confident that a robust system is in place to provide biosecurity and to mitigate the possibility of any contamination to their horses, resulting in an anti-doping violation which can end a rider's career. Given the proximity of the proposed site to my grassland, I cannot see how, with the best will in the world, the event organisers will be able to mitigate the risk of such devastating consequences. In addition to the high performance animals which graze on my land, we also produce haylage which is fed to my horses, visiting horses, and sold into the equestrian industry. There would need to be extreme measures taken to guarantee such things as glass, metal, plastics, needles, human waste, or illegal substances were not contaminating my grassland from which the haylage is made. Should any unwarranted substances find their way onto the land, it could cause contamination for years to come, let alone the bottles, metal rings, needles, plastic waste, and all other sorts of rubbish that could be lethal to the horses, sheep, or wildlife who will graze and roam the land. Finally, I'd like to state my concerns regarding the inappropriate location. In my opinion, there would be unnecessary pressure on the emergency services due to the remote location of the proposed site and difficult access for the emergency services due to the steep embankments and bog spots in the woodlands. The road infrastructure simply will not cope with such huge increase in the traffic due to the volume of people attending. Too many of our surrounding villages have small roads and are already at maximum capacity for traffic. As stated before, there will be an increased fire risk in the woods because of the time of year. There are no services existing on site, and I'd like to know how they propose to bring the water and the electricity to run everything, firstly, in an environmentally friendly way, and secondly, with no impact to the local farmers watering their animals at the hottest time of the year. It goes without saying the environmental impact of disturbing all flora and fauna will cause much distress for years to come should this festival be allowed to go ahead. To sum up, I'm utterly terrified of the potential impact and consequences this music festival could have on my whole life. I ask you to reject this application or be held wholly responsible for the consequences. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily Chandler. Over to members. Do you have any questions for Emily? Councillor Pritchett.
Yeah, if an arrangement could be made with the county council for the diversion of the footpath for the period of the event, how would that help? If it could be arranged.
In my opinion, there would still be a huge risk and disturbance from the noise, let alone I still think people would try and get to the festival through the footpath. Unless you could manage the security of it, absolutely 110%.
The security is okay. What would be a dive? Would that mitigation, would that not solve the main problem?
Not in my opinion, no.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett. Councillor Posnett.
I would just like to say thank you very much for your in-depth talk to us, presentation to us today. Although we may have great sympathy and concern for you about your business, as a licensing committee, we are very limited in what we can do regarding people's businesses. So whichever way the decision goes, I would like you to sort of just bear that in mind. But thank you. I don't disagree with your points that you've made, and it was a well put together presentation. Thank you.
I have no questions, but I do thank you for that very thorough and detailed personal explanation and understanding. But over to the legal advisors. Do you have any? No questions. Does the applicant, do you have any questions? No. Okay. Does anybody at all have any questions for Emily Chandler? No. Okay, well, thank you very much, Emily, and we do appreciate that. And we call the next speaker, member of the public, Steve Exwood, who has an interested party also. Steve.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to talk at this application hearing. I'm Steve Exwood and I'm a resident of Barkston and Vale, one of a number of villages that will be significantly impacted over a sustained period if this application is allowed. The location for the proposed Noisley Festival is completely inappropriate for this type of event. As you've already heard, the festival is likely to set to act as a venue for crime and disorder, will jeopardise public safety, create extensive public nuisance, and is very likely to increase the wider risk to children. I will explain how the scale of the event and the perceived lack of event management considerations exacerbate an already high-risk proposal. The event is set to have 10 or 15,000 people, with many more likely to seek unticketed entry during the event. There will be a huge temporary infrastructure and one hell of a party in a remote rural area of the county, in pristine woodland, on an escarpment, with poor transport, poor road networks, limited public services and communication. What could go wrong? Melton Borough Council has significant responsibility to take the risks that of this proposed event forces on the local community and consider them. In addition to the number of people likely to attend the proposed activities, please consider the period and the scale of disruption and nuisance to people, the environment and local businesses. The Noisley website states that the 2021 traffic management measures would be in place from the 1st to the 19th of July for a proposed similar event. It is likely that the same will apply in 2022 and indicates the actual period of heavy activity. This means there will be at least 20 days of high level of traffic, noise and disruption to both the community and wildlife in this area. Also an extended period of risk. The Beaver Estate is also proposing to host another festival of similar scale and disruption just 1 mile from this site between the 1st and 4th of July, with all the same levels of disruption, nuisance, risk and chaos. The licensing process needs to consider the impact of these combined events over a 30-day plus period. Traditionally, local community and other recreational events are held in this period. These include horse riders, cyclists, walkers, and other independent or organised events. Many of our own local events will now need to be cancelled or reconsidered so that the applicant can profit at the expense of our community. The common last day of school will be the 8th of July 2022. And it is inevitable that children will be in the Vale in increased numbers. The proposed event will lead to a range of increased risk for children, ranging from road accidents to drug taking. Many people work from home in this area, and these functions, as well as local trade businesses, will be impacted for this lengthy period, not just due to the general nuisance, but also due to communication, public services, and the entire area being swamped and effectively locked down. This is not fair or reasonable. The plan is to utilise public services to support the event. The levels of demand for water, transport and mobile communications will overwhelm the already creaking services in this part of the Vale. Has the applicant or Melton Borough Council studied the level of water supply and usage? Can the system take another 10,000 plus people, or will the community again have to bear the brunt of this? The local community will have to suffer further damaged roads and environment for a long time after everyone else has gone home at our cost. The planning process needs to consider that the traffic management consultants appointed by Noisley have yet to visit the site. And of course, the actual event management plan is for the 2021 event, which is held elsewhere. The degree of management planning is very poor and can only lead to increased risks. The applicant says that it will take 12 months to plan for this event. The event is only nearly 6 months away. The lack of forward planning increases the level of risks for everybody involved. The level of planning and understanding is far too low for an event of this scale, and granting a licence will lead to serious unforeseen issues. The site is accessed by rural roads. Some are single track, none have footpaths. The traffic plan to signpost but not control traffic via the A52 down Long Lane to the main entrance. As it stands, the traffic impact will be an additional 500 vehicles per hour just for this event at the peak time. Long Lane is a dangerous road. The other roads designated for access are single track and will remain open for the public during the duration. The councils need to consider that an additional 500 vehicles per hour joining the A52 at Bottisford, which is already an accident black spot, will cause further accidents. It is also likely that traffic will go via other routes, as we've already heard. In fact, the traffic plan suggests using the villages to the north of the site as access routes. The surrounding villages for miles will be disrupted for days and possibly weeks. The proposal is that the site will not be fenced. In fact, it cannot be fenced due to the steep terrain and dense woodland. There will be no CCTV systems in place and only security on the main entrance and roving patrols, as we've heard. This means there will be free access to the site and almost no control over the wider area. It is inevitable that people will seek, including children who are on school holiday, will seek to gain unauthorised access due to the lack of controls. There could be thousands of additional people in this area. This is likely to lead to free access of illegal substances and drugs and similar to the site. In addition, the site can be accessed via country roads and footpaths from all sides. Unauthorised parking will occur with cars being dumped in villages and on verges and surrounding area for the duration of the event. This will, of course, widen the area the wildlife and the biodiversity is impacted outside the proposed area boundary. The event will cause noise. 10,000 or 15,000 people alone will cause significant noise. This won't stop when the music is turned down. Also, the extended build and construction period of the process will cause noise and disruption. The event will need to be resupplied over a 24-hour period. This will cause noise and disruption. The event being held on a hill will be clearly visible and audible for miles. This in itself will attract crowds of unexpected and unplanned for visitors of all types. Given the likely damage to wildlife and biodiversity, it is likely that eco-protesters and others will seek to prevent the event from going ahead or cause disruption. We have all seen the increase in direct action recently. The area is very quiet, especially during the night. Sound travels in unusual and unexpected ways due to the local geography. Noise can be heard clearly in parts of Barkston and Vale from surrounding villages that is less clear elsewhere, even if you're nearer. The local football field is near to the proposed site, and the noise from 30 people is very clear and loud at the north end of the Barkstone village, whilst not so clear at the south end. The same applies for other surrounding villages. The sound monitoring site has been marked at the nearest point to the festival, but not at the location where the most noise will be heard. This indicates a lack of understanding and planning, which will lead to significant nuisance if the event proceeds. To sum up, the Noisily website itself says, communicating and engaging with local residents is really important to us. We want to build positive relationships with our local community. We believe this is an essential ingredient to creating a successful and sustainable event. We really cannot do this without your support, and we wouldn't want to either. As a local resident, I can categorically say that Noisily has nothing to communicate or engage with our community. In fact, the notices have just been enough to comply with the legal requirement. If Noisily had bothered to engage the community, they would know that there's a significant level of opposition. By their own standard and statement, this event should not proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Exwood. Over to members. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Exwood. One of the 4 licensing objectives is the protection of children. Noisily are admitting people only over the 18 and the paperwork with various ID checks, alcohol and everything like that. In my assessment of the papers, in terms of footpaths and around, let's assume that there's a traffic plan. I haven't marked the risk to children high. So can you actually explain a little bit more on what you think the risk to children is?
The risk to children varies, and we'll talk to start about access. The area is a recreational area with many children cycling, using the area and particularly footpaths, as my own son does. It will be the school holidays. Children will be around during the day at increased levels. If there is no controlled access to an extensive boundary, which I don't believe there can be controlled access because of the woodland and the terrain, people can access the site more easily. Children, being inquisitive creatures as they are, will seek to access the site to things that are licensed or supposed to be available to over 18s only. Okay, that will be very difficult to prevent. In addition, children will be on the roads. They will be out the house. Unless you're going to lock down children and actually ask them to stay at home, they will be using the roads, cycling, accessing football pitches, things like that that are around this area. The increased levels of traffic present a significant threat to children. So either you've got to change their way of life, or this event shouldn't proceed. Does that answer the question?
It's interesting. Yes, you've picked up some of the points. Yes, that I've picked up. The cycling, the track at the top of the hill is no longer within, and there will be a risk. Hopefully, to work a risk plan out about that. And yes, there will be some teenagers, but I don't see too many teenagers exploring on bikes on their own. They're mostly with parents up there. So I'm just trying to get in licensing terms regarding the event itself, and if there was security at the various interesting entrance points, footpaths and stuff, that would certainly help mitigate children popping in to have a look or doing something they shouldn't do. Would it not?
I'm sure it would, but as an example, I think it's wrong to say that a small number of teenagers use that area. I think quite a large number of teenagers from the villages, bearing in mind the remote location, there isn't much else to do, are out active, engaging with the environment. You will also be aware in Harvey until recently, there was a empty factory, the empty cheese factory, which, if anyone knows, was a constant source of attraction for young children in that area, even with levels of security there, with all the dangers that brought. The same sort of thing will happen and apply.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor Pritchett, for your question, and Steve Exwood for his response. Oh yes, Councillor Pusnett.
Did I hear you correctly say that it was unfenced, the event?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm sure this is now a question for the applicant, because I'm sure I've read in the papers that it's going to be securely fenced off.
The site's entirely fenced.
So the site is fenced, and as I say, there's a large security presence with professional security team headed up by Stuart, who's actually here, who works in. He's an active military personnel, and he works in military logistics. So he knows what he's doing. He's an expert in his field.
Can I just say, I thought that was the activity area, not the entire site in the documents.
So the activity area is the licensed area.
Okay. No further questions from members. Okay. So, legal advisor, any questions? No. Does the applicant themselves have any questions? No. And any party at all, anywhere, have any questions? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank Steve Exwood, for coming forwards and for that account. That's very interesting. And I'd like to call the last and final member of the public, Ben Lee, as an interested party who would like to make a representation. Thank you, Ben.
Good morning, all. Can you hear me at the back? Excellent. Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Lee. My interest in this is I am a local resident. Apparently, I live less than a mile from the proposed site. I've made a more detailed representation of this, as have many other people, and I hope the subcommittee has had the opportunity to study them carefully. This being a Monday morning, I'm sure we've all got things that we need to be getting on with. So I will try and keep this brief. 3 points. Point number 1, crime. First thing to say is the absence of a representation by the police is not the same as a ringing endorsement. There is strong evidence to suggest that Noisley Festival will include drug taking. Despite the material submitted with this application, statements, actions, and the marketing of Noisley Festival all suggest that drug use is tolerated and accepted within the festival. In evidence submitted to a parliamentary committee, Noisley Festivals Limited itself argued that drug use was inevitable and could only ever be managed. Maintaining this ambiguous position on drug use suggests that Noisley Festivals is willing to pay lip service to limiting drug use when they have to, while simultaneously marketing themselves as being drug friendly. I would note further that steps to prevent drugs from coming into the festival ground or the licensed area are unlikely to prevent festival goers from getting high either before entering the site, in the camping ground, or in the car park. Or do you plan to search every car entering the site? Granting this application is inconsistent with the stated objective of preventing crime. Point number 2, public nuisance. The proposed site is quiet, open, and close to residential villages. The festival is proposing to play EDM, that's electronic dance music, which includes low frequency noise, until 5 a.m. That is later than any other event in the Vale, or indeed most other festivals in the UK, for a total of 4 nights. Even Reading Festival knocks it off by 11:30. This event has the very real potential to disrupt sleep and blight the lives of a large number of local residents, creating a public nuisance. I and many other residents have noted with interest that another festival currently being applied for to take place in the grounds of Belvoir Castle switches to a silent disco format after midnight. Why is that not the case here? Why is some residents' sleep afforded greater protection than others? The incomplete noise management plan, including the hotline, represents only a promise, with very little reassurance for local residents and few consequences, if any, for Noisley if they fail to meet their stated goals. The transitory nature of the festival means that long-term enforcement action is likely unviable. The nature of noise pollution means that specialist equipment is required to measure and evidence claims, equipment that local residents do not have. Noisley are asking to mark their own homework. Granting this application is inconsistent with the objective of preventing public nuisance. Point number 3, and the only thing I could come up with to call this point is, are you kidding me? The licensing application is asking to take a quiet, relatively crime-free field less than a mile from residential villages and replace it with a noisy festival marketing itself as a venue for the consumption of psychedelic drugs. This festival is larger, later, and louder than any other event held in the surrounding location. The detriment to the surrounding area, including crime and nuisance, will be significant and widespread. Noisley Festivals Limited is effectively asking local residents and you, members of the committee, to trust them. However, there are many things about this application that give both me and other local residents pause for thought. There's a seeming lack of knowledge about the site and its hazards, the last-minute departure of the festival from its original home, the failure to schedule this event outside of term time, although there seems to be some kind of dispute about that, the repeated failure to accurately identify the site. Even now, the festival is listed as taking place in Eton. The failure to consult local parish councils and residents, the continued sale of tickets before a site has been confirmed for the festival, the last-minute timing of this application, and the ambiguous position on the use of drugs and the involvement of the Psychedelic Society. This is a rushed, ill-thought-out, high-risk application inconsistent with the licensing objectives as stated, and I ask that you reject it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben Lee. Okay, members, any questions? Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you. On the drugs one, statistically, for deaths at festivals, there's been none reported for Noisley, yet there have been deaths at other festivals. Right? What is the difference between Noisley being here than the Rolling Stones? What's the difference? What is the difference between Noiseley as an application rather than the Rolling Stones or the type of acts that you would get at Glastonbury? What is the difference?
Can you hear me? There we go. The difference to my mind is that a Rolling Stone Festival's concert does not advertise itself as being a venue for the promotion of psychedelic culture. It doesn't invite the Psychedelic Society to come and deliver lectures and education, a society that advocates for the use of psychedelic drugs, the responsible use of psychedelic drugs, but responsibly committing a crime is still committing a crime. And the licensing objectives set out, in law are the prevention of crime. So I don't see the two things as being consistent.
Thank you. If I can just follow up, some people have said to me that the Noiseley position of checking people, amnesty bins and that sort of thing, and the realism that some people will take drugs, and the engagement they've had with the government and the help on site is actually far-sighted. And this is from parents that I'm mixing with. So there's not there could be another view to the one that you're putting forward.
I'm sure there could be, but are you really advocating for a progressive attitude to breaking the law?
No, and I haven't seen anything in the documents where the applicant is in that sort of area.
But have you considered how the festival is marketed and perceived by the people who attend it?
I have seen the marketing and everything else like that, but I'm just want to flush out everything and put another point of view to that one that you're coming from that is out there as well, that I'm aware of. But I will take your comments and other similar ones into account in the applicant in the discussion after. Thank you.
No. I mean, well, I've got a question about the noise at night issue, which would concern me if I was in the area. It was interesting you're saying that, similar festivals close at midnight, but do they not turn the music down? So I was just trying to find in all this paperwork the details about the sound levels, actually, and I'm kind
Page
of
95, Chair, might help.
oh,
Page 95.
Oh, thank you. That's really useful because I was scrambling here to catch up with it. Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering what you think is would be reasonable. Complete shut off music at midnight or 1 o'clock, or turning down during the night at a level so that the residents are comfortable with it. So over to you. Really, Ben, what would you think acceptable in your opinion, just out of interest, so we can kind of go away and make an honest judgment?
So this is one of the inherent issues with having a large music festival, which is that kind of judgments around sound are difficult to measure and they're very difficult to evidence. You need specialist equipment, you need specialist training. One of the ways that we do that is this is effectively outsourced to Noiseley festivals through the noise management plan and their employment of, who I'm sure are very good and very competent sort of sound people. So that's fine. But the fact remains that some people are more sensitive to noise than others. Some people are more sensitive to noise at particular times of the day than others. I myself have a 3-year-old child who still naps during the day. A particular concern, I understand this is a concern kind of, in noise management in general, is the presence of low frequency sound, which behaves differently. It's not knocked down by background noise or reflected off buildings. It travels through solid objects. It can be perceived by people indoors more effectively than others. The risk we have if you were to grant this application is effectively we'd have an arbitrary decibel level set. Noisily would have the remote monitoring set up somewhere in Stathern, presumably. They'd be measuring the noise, but we wouldn't have any way to check that. And if you're lying there at 3 in the morning, hearing the constant thump of a bass that's not showing up on Noiseley's hardware for whatever reason, there's no recourse. There's nothing you can do about it. You're stuck listening to this. There's no way you can evidence your claims. And it's got everybody, frankly, very anxious about what these people are planning. And we don't really understand, why does this have to go on at 5 in the morning, particularly given the fact that there's an event happening as I understand it, the week before, which is switching to a wholly silent disco format, which involves, as I understand it, I've never been to a silent disco, but as I understand it, people will switch to headphones and listen to a collective, source of music while not disturbing the people around them. So I think that is, if you were to grant it, obviously there are a lot of other issues attendant to this, but why isn't that being explored as an option?
Yes, that's interesting. Thank you for that response. It was detailed and thorough and food for thought as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, any more questions? No? Okay, so legal advisor, any questions? Applicant questions? Oh, yes, we have a question from the applicant.
Thank you, Chair.
Herewith, thank you.
Obviously, you've made a great deal about drugs and our approach to drugs. Have you got any evidence for this committee that drug-related offences have taken place at any of our previous festivals?
So the death you referred to as a suicide, which was the student in Brighton who fell 60 feet to his death. Apparently the inquest, the toxicology report there found that he consumed LSD, cocaine and cannabis at Noisley Festival, which is thought related to his death.
My question was, have you got any evidence? We're talking about a suicide. I fully accept that. We weren't part of that coroner's inquest. There was no investigation, that Noisley weren't approached in relation to that death. I don't wish to comment on anyone's suicide or the mental health of the young man in question. What I'm trying to get to is we've been operating since 2012 in the absence of a police representation. Have you got any evidence for this committee about how we deal with drugs?
So first of all, with the greatest respect in the world, you just suggested that it was a mental health issue. So you are commenting on this person's suicide. I'd also say that the only evidence I can offer is the way you present yourselves. And the way you present yourselves is and the way you're referenced by people who have attended your festival. There's quite a detailed account from a 20-year-old psytrance virgin off his face on acid at Noisley Festival. That's the only evidence I can provide. There you go.
Did you contact the police?
No, I didn't. It's not my festival.
In relation to noise, obviously that's a huge issue. I don't know whether you've got, I know you've had access to it, but I appreciate you haven't got the bundle in front of you, but the conditions which have been agreed with Mr. Marchenko in relation to noise nuisance specifically break down noise levels for different times. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
And the condition also talks about the levels, whilst ever they're decibel levels and can be monitored, they're also subject to a subjective assessment by an officer of the council. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
So to say that we're marking our own homework isn't true, is it?
You're in charge of the monitoring equipment. Is that correct? You're paying for it?
This is
You're
all
employing the sound
monitored.
management company to manage the noise from your event?
But this is a condition drafted by the council's environmental health officer.
Yes.
And if we breach it, we're liable to prosecution.
Okay.
That would be the only point I wish to make. It is a condition drafted by Mr. Marchenko. It's entirely enforceable. It's entirely monitorable. And it's not a case of marking our own homework.
Thank you for the clarification from the applicant, and thanks to Ben Lee too for his account there, and responses to the questions. Have we got somebody? Oh, we got somebody at the back. A question from the back. Where can they be heard? Would you like to come forward to this desk here and press the button in the bottom at the bottom row till the light comes on, so that you can speak into the microphone and be heard nice and clearly? Thank you. Sorry, could you announce your name as well as you speak? Oh, it's.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Councillor Under.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted really check my glasses. I've been trying to find the information going back through the documentation, because obviously there was a substantial amount provided. And actually in one of the submissions that was made, there is a quote following freedom of information request from Leicestershire Police. And if I give you the reference number, you can go back through. It's FOI 004079/21.
Is this a question?
It relates to this point. So just to clarify the question that you've made here regarding the, in 2019, the last time the Noisley Festival was heard.
This needs to be a question of the speaker, Ben, at this
Sorry.
point.
It was just relating to whether Ben was aware that there had been a freedom of information request to the police regarding their last festival in 2019 and the use of MDMA. Did you read that in the documentation, Ben?
I did not. I'd be very interested to see what it said, though.
May I read that?
Yeah, I know you'd like to clarify that, but this is just questions of the speaker currently. But I do thank you for interjecting there so people can look it up if they want to from paperwork. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Underwood. Councillor Pritchett.
I'd just like to say that document I've read as every single page in this document, and I've followed it up, so I do know about that, and I've taken that into account in what I've said so far, and may consider later. So I am aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pritchett. Thank you. Okay. Any further questions of the speaker, current speaker, Ben Lee? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I am inviting the closing speeches now in the following order. The interested parties and the applicant. Oh, I can't hear you. Would you like to come forwards and just press the button in the middle so we can hear you speak? Oh, okay. You are the environmental health rep. Would you like to just press the button? Yes, press the button in the middle of the so we can hear you. That's it. Lovely.
Okay.
So you're the environmental health representative. Yes, you haven't been asked to speak because there haven't been a reason to. Is that? Oh, over to the legal advisor.
My understanding is, Mr. Marchenko, that because the conditions had agreed, you didn't ask to speak at the hearing. Is that correct?
I didn't ask to speak. I assume I would be speaking and there will be questions for me in relation to noise, not least because of the number of noise-related issues raised by the panelists today. So if there are any questions and the opportunity allows, then I'm here to answer questions.
Because you've not asked to put in a verbal representation, unless anybody has got any specific questions that they wish you to address, you don't have the opportunity to kind of give your representation now, because you should have in fact advised licensing that that's something that you wanted to do beforehand.
Okay, I'm not asking to give any further representations. I'm here to answer any questions that the panel may have of me.
Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you, officer. In your good work that you've been working on sound levels with the applicant, I'm thinking now of Sunday. Sunday's a sensitive day. In your calculations, have you taken into account whether any service in Stathern Church, Barkston, Plunger or Red Mile will be able to be conducted without this noise coming through in your calculations?
Service as in a church service, for example?
Hymns, organ, yes.
Okay. I assume the church services will occur in daytime hours, in which case the sound level limit for daytime hours is 50 decibels. Assuming for the protection offered by the building facade, I expect sound levels inside to be the range of 35 to 38 decibels. So although the noise may be detectable, I wouldn't anticipate it would obstruct speech or the service itself.
So what you're saying is that they would be hearing the noise inside the church, but they'd still be able to talk to each other.
In relation to guidance, one would assume that, well, the guidance would stipulate that speech interference may start to occur at around 50 to 55 decibels, whereas inside I would anticipate levels to be somewhat lower in the region of 35 to 38. So in that regard, by making that comparison to guidance, I would not expect speech to be interfered with during this church service.
Answered my question there. You're saying that people will be able to speak and talk to each other, but the noise level will be not sufficient to interfere with it.
That is correct, yes.
But you're not saying it would be excluded.
It would, I'd expect it to be, that if the event played to the noise limit, I would expect it to be detectable, as in one would hear the noise, but it should not interfere with speech levels. That would assume the event plays the noise limit, and at that particular receptor, that limit is played to.
Thank you very much.
Could I just ask a question? I mean, I'm not a sound expert, and no amount of reading documents or even going on YouTube in the middle of the night, you know, can give me an idea of how loud things are. I mean, can you give me an idea now? I mean, how loud is my voice? Just you know, on the decibel state, and how loud is a horn of a car? You know, I mean, just so what is 50 decibels as you're lying in a village next to it at night? Sorry, I just need a little bit more on that.
If you would like to pose these questions to our sound expert, Chris Beale, whose career is based around sound management and sound.
Just a rough idea. What is 50 decibels in your to the lay person?
Yes,
the person
it would be
understand
the
it.
equivalent of a busy office environment.
Thank you. That's great. Yes, thank you. Councillor Posnett.
Can I just say thank you for your report? It was very much in depth. When I was employed, my job was an occupational health nurse, so I got involved with noise hearings, and I worked for Pet Foods, which was a much bigger local employer in those days, and have been round the town in the middle of the night when residents have complained about noise, seeing and being with the safety officers when they've taken the sound recordings. It took me back to those days when I had to work hard to understand them, I promise you. But what I did want to know is, if it's going to be 50 decibels, is that during daylight hours?
Yes, that's daylight hours only. So between, well, from the start of the music event every day until 11 p.m. in the evening, after which nighttime noise would ensue and a different level would be in place.
Thank you very much for that.
Yes, thank you. Okay. No, you're right. Okay. Yes. No more questions from anybody at this point by the looks of it. Okay, so we will now move on to the closes. But thank you very much for that. The sound expert gave us a little bit of insight. I do appreciate that. I did need that myself personally. Okay, so now the closing speeches. Thank you, everyone. So I now invite the closing speeches in the following order: the interested parties and the applicant. So, Councillor Underwood, would you like to make a closing speech at all? A minute, please, Councillor Underwood, just a... Oh, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Oh, right. Up to 10 minutes, actually. Oh, can you just bear with us, Councillor Underwood? We're having a little bit of confer here. Actually, before the closing speeches, and so that you can kind of like reflect and put your closing speeches together, I do propose, and I've been requested this also, that we have a 10-minute comfort break. This will just give us a little bit of time to compose ourselves. I'm sorry, Councillor Underwood. I hope this will benefit you anyway when you come to sum up. So in a moment, I shall call after the 10, how long should we have? 5 minutes? Yes, just 5-minute comfort break. I've got somebody at the back there with a hand up. Yes. Yes, there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the interested parties. So that's up to a potential of 50 minutes. And well, that's it, isn't it? Up to 50 minutes. And yourselves, the applicant, of course. I wouldn't forget you. So an hour. So I think we'll have a comfort break so that we can have an hour of closing speeches. And I think this may work for you so that you could get your ideas down for those closing speeches. Thank you.
Sarah, I've done something.
I don't think it matters.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, 5 minutes are up. So if you could resume your seats as soon as conveniently possible so that we can recommence. Thank you. Okay, everybody, if you could resume your seats as soon as possible. We are about to start with the summing up speeches. Can I just remind you also, in the summing up speeches, which are the closing speeches, if you could keep to the licensing objectives, or at least bear them in mind, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, the issue of public safety, and the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Those are our objectives. So starting with Councillor Cherry Underwood from Statham Parish Council. So if we would like to resume as you were, yes, if you'd like to take the central one. Thank you. And press that.
Bit like musical chairs. Is that okay? Thank you. Really, in terms of summing up, I don't intend to go back over everything that you've heard already, but I think if I can just remind you of the discussion we've had around the scale of this event and on the location and how we believe that leads to insurmountable levels of risk. The mitigation required to manage any of these risks would in fact require a tri-county response. It was alluded to earlier, but if we talk about emergency services responses, whether that's police, fire, ambulance, etc., that will pull emergency services from Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire and Leicestershire. That would be something that this local authority would have to consider within its safety advisory group. And to clarify really around the question around drugs is that in 2019, and this is a representation from Ms. Pear, which is in your application pack. In 2019, the last time the Noisley Festival was held, multiple offenders were found with MDMA, a Class A drug, in their possession by police. The source of that is a Freedom of Information request to Leicestershire Police. The possession of a Class A drug would require the police to arrest the person and take them to the nearest Leicestershire Police custody suite, this being Leicester, 24 miles away. That would distract the police from other core work that we require of them across the Vale. So really just to clarify that point and just ask you to consider everything else that you've heard today in terms of scale and risk and impact to a local rural community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Underwood. I'd also now like to call Councillor Tom Parry from Barkston, Plunga and Redmile Parish Council.
May I just say that we weren't notified that we would be able to give closing speeches, and in fact, most of us need to go back to work. So,
okay. Has he? Are they no longer?
I don't.
Tom's not here.
Ben Lee has gone. Steve Exwood has gone. Tom Parry has had to leave us for work purposes. And I don't believe, I'm not sure that Emily Chandler.
Emily has nothing further to add. Councillor Tom Parry has had to go. Steve Exwood has had to go. How about Ben Lee? Ben Lee's gone as well because he was over at the far corner. My goodness. Okay, so due to work commitments, actually, the parties have gone. So that leaves the applicant themselves full 10 minutes to have a chance to sum up and a closing speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. As Mr. Hazelrig has hopefully clarified and given some insight to, this is a holistic festival. It's a music and arts festival. It's not just a live music event. It approaches the mind, the body and the soul. And all of the activities which we're proposing have been fully risk assessed. The event management plan is a huge document. It is in your current pack. It's in its draft form. It has to be in a draft at the moment. It's an organic document which will, if you're minded to grant, require input from a whole range of agencies and authorities. It's not that it's ill-advised. It's not that we're ill-prepared. It's that the stage we're at in documentation, and it would be wrong not to have put the documents in, but it would also be entirely misleading not to make it clear from the outset the input that's still required from responsible agencies. There has already been plenty of positive engagement with the police, with authorities, as Mr. Hazelrig touched upon, and this application is served on all the responsible authorities purely from a licensing point of view, so police, planning, fire, and none of those agencies have raised a representation. Now, a huge amount has been made about drugs, and it will be my strong submission to you that there is no evidence at all to suggest that we pose a problem in terms of any crime or disorder. And if there were evidence to support that or any of those fears, the police would have raised an objection. They are the responsible authority who are responsible for ensuring the prevention of crime and disorder. Traffic again, a topic which has been touched on, and understandably, ununderstandably so. Our traffic management and security expert is here. Traffic monitoring has already begun to take place around the site morning and afternoon to get a clear idea of road use and traffic numbers. There will be measures which are in the policy, but just to highlight, we can take steps. Signage can be put up on the website before the event, at the time, asking those travelling not to follow sat-nav. We can reroute around villages to ensure that Redmail and Staithen villages aren't impacted by traffic. Our traffic expert will work very closely with the Highways Agency to ensure a minimal disruption. In terms of security, just to confirm, and for the avoidance of any doubt, the site is entirely fenced. There will be at all times between 50 and 60 members of security staff who will be on duty. There will also be car park stewards at all time. So there is that element of security there. Noise, as again, a huge factor and concern for local residents, and I'm sure for members of the committee. We don't expect there to be any noise impact for local residents. The decibel levels which are touched upon in the conditions are maximum levels. Mr. Beale is in no doubt that we're not going to reach those levels. This isn't our sound expert, this isn't his first event. Having worked with Noisily all along, he's worked with Reading Festival for the past 15 years and also Glastonbury for the last 10 years. This is coming from an informed decision. These are not ill-advised. This is not someone just having a go at managing noise. And I certainly take issue with any suggestion that we're going to mark our own homework. There's been a significant amount of positive engagement with Mr. Marchenko, who in my submission has drafted some very comprehensive conditions in relation to noise nuisance. In addition to the the event management plan, there are also conditions which are set out in the operating schedule. We offer those willingly. They're not to try and appease anyone. They were included from the beginning. And the event management plan effectively becomes the Bible, the playbook for this event. But it's also a plan which all authorities, the licensing authority in particular, have to agree. So whilst we draft it, it's not that we're setting the goalposts. It's very much a collaborative process. We do have our own ambulances on site. The routes for emergency vehicles are dealt with within the event management plan, but it's not that we are solely relying on, I know that we touched upon the tri-county response and perhaps, the pressure we might place on local services. That is thought of, it's addressed, and it's already catered for within the plan. The security advisory group and the event management plan are subject to a huge amount of scrutiny. And it's clear today there's a great deal of emotion and allegations of things which might happen or could potentially happen. In terms of those 4 licensing objectives, the prevention of public nuisance, it would be my submission that has been fully addressed, responsibly addressed by the applicant, and with the conditions which have been agreed with your environmental health officer. The prevention of crime and disorder, in my submission, you have no evidence before you to suggest that we pose any risk to crime or disorder in the running of this event. Public safety, again, I hope that you are satisfied would be addressed with the SAG group and the event management plan. Finally, in turning to the protection of children from harm, generally in license applications, what that objective focuses on is ensuring that under 18s can't buy alcohol, they're not able to consume it, and that they're not exposed to inappropriate entertainment. Under 18s won't be at our event. So in my submission, there should be no real fears in relation to those 4 objectives. I had indicated to your legal advisor, I wish to quote just from one piece of case law, and I do have copies to circulate for you. It's a leading licensing case, which will come as no surprise to her. And in the Thwaites case, In particular, points which are made in the judgment is that conclusions which are drawn by magistrates court or licensing committee need to be based on real evidence. And the decision in the Thwaites case urges a very close scrutiny of your own anxieties about matters such as noise, public nuisance, crime, very carefully. And I'm sure that you and your colleagues will do this in your deliberations, need to be scrutinised very carefully when responsible authorities haven't raised objections. And in the absence of objections from responsible authorities, you need some very clear evidence to ignore that. It would be my submission that the evidence before you supports our position that this is a well-run event with a hugely experienced team behind Mr. Hazelrig, each looking and focusing on their own specialisms, whether that be noise, whether it be event management, whether it be security, whether it be traffic. It isn't that Mr. Hazelrig sits before you claiming to do all this alone. He's worked with for many, many years and built and has the support of an enviable and experienced team. In seeking a premises license, in terms of recourse, where do we go? What do we do if things go wrong, which we do not believe they will, but comfort needs to be given, particularly to those who've shown concern. Obviously, a review could be called if post-event there is evidence of any issues. But in terms of during that 4 days, it has always been the case that both the local authority and the police can serve a closure order if there is any evidence of disorder or public nuisance. You don't need a hearing, you don't need a prosecution. They can come along and close the event at no moment's notice if they feel there is sufficient evidence. And that has ever been the case and was always the case with the previous events. And as our track record proves, that sort of heavy armoury has never been necessary. So I would ask you and your colleagues in your deliberations to grant this application, imposing the conditions that are offered within the operating schedule, together with the additional ones drafted by your environmental health officers. And please be assured of the applicant's willingness to work with residents and nearby neighbours in terms of giving thought to where stewards, for example, where stewards might need to be located to protect other farms, etc. But the willingness to work with local residents is a very sincere one. So I think unless I can assist you any further, that is my closing submission.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I shall now adjourn the hearing and the subcommittee will retire along with the legal advisor. So we shall back. Have we got a time on that? No, we haven't got a time on that actually. As long as it takes. Yes, obviously we shall keep it as short as we can, but give it the full our full attention and consideration. Thank you, everybody, and we shall look forward to seeing you again shortly. Thank you. Thank you.
Huh? Ah, yes, I can hear myself almost now. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Ah, I'm wondering if that's put me back.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is the subcommittee of the licensing committee re-adjourning after our deliberations as regards the applicant here for Noisily. And I would like to refer now to my legal advisor, Louise Arnold, for the official decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I confirm the members' decision, I would just like to point out that the advice that has been reiterated to members today is the advice in the 182 guidance in relation to the responsible authorities, as well as what's relevant representation, specifically in relation to commercial business, etc. The decision of the members is to reject the application today on the basis that there are concerns that this close to the festival, that's less than 6 months before the event, the plans at Appendix F, G, H, I and J relate to different sites. Whilst they do appear to be comprehensive and address the licensing objectives for the sites that they were created for, they do not yet address the impact on the licensing objectives specific to this site. With regard to public safety and crime and disorder, everyone's comments and concerns have been noted. The event management plan and security plan have failed to specifically address the concerns for this site. Members are concerned that with less than 6 months until the start of the event, there is no time to work with highways and other relevant agencies to address such issues and concerns. Similarly, with regard to the prevention of public nuisance and protection of harm of children, again, members have listened to the concerns and noted the lack of specific site plans for this site. Overall, from the evidence provided in support of the application, members do not feel that the licensing objectives have been promoted, so the licence is rejected. Thank you. The only other thing to say is that the applicant and members and parties here present do have the right to appeal, which is set out in the documentation, which must be done within 21 days. And that's it from the licensing committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance today. And I now announce that the subcommittee meeting has finished at just after 2 o'clock, 2:03 today. And thank you very much.